Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans.
All right, guys, we're back again this week with Buddy and Kimberly Rushing from White Feather Investments. Here we go.
You know, one of the things from the Norris Group, what we want to do is make sure that we're pointing people towards what you're doing and really bringing awareness to what White Feather is doing and what they're about. So, either of you, Buddy, Kimberly, whoever wants to jump in, can you tell our audience what White Feather Investments is doing and the impact that it's having on those around you and who your audience is?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed quite a bit, right? I mean, you remember whenever we first launched it, like what was even our idea of what it would be? Just buy rental properties, right? Like,
yeah, it wasn't even doing our thing. And then we had all of our friends start asking if they could do it with us.
Yeah.
And we're like, sure.
Yeah. We had a lot of people interested in following suit. And then a lot of people, that morphed into, well, okay, you're helping us buy properties just like you. But we want to build businesses. We want to build financial freedom. We don't just want to have a rental property or two. And so can you train us? And so that evolved into a training program and everything. So as it stands right now, White Feather is an ecosystem. It's about 600 people, military veterans and their families spread around the United States. And we've trained all of them basically ourselves and learned along the process. It's not like
He's being cute. It was not me.
Well, no, I mean, it was all him. Actually, it was kind of funny because we talked about this, right? When I was in Afghanistan, it was basically 99% her. And then when I came back, we kind of shared the responsibilities. And then when we started having children, we made a deliberate decision. Like I've always, loved the fact that my mom was so invested in our lives. Even though she had a job, she was super invested in our lives. And we always wanted Kimberly to be extremely invested. So it was like, all right, Buddy, you handle most of the business and I'll handle, figuring out this crazy world of parenting. Right. And, has done an absolutely phenomenal job of it. But one of the aspects of that is most of the business is shifted over to me. So yeah, once we started training people, what happened is they would take that knowledge and they would go out and execute and then build businesses themselves. And those businesses, whether they be syndications or funds or flipping businesses or whatever, oftentimes when you're in a business, like you're a builder, right? Among many other things. One of the things you need investors. You also need capital. You also need, people to come in and join your team. And so what they would do is those businesses would go out and then they'd curve right back in and come back to White Feather and say, hey, look, I need capital. I need this. I need that. And so it's created this ecosystem where you train people, they build businesses, and then they turn back and offer those opportunities back to the ecosystem. So it's become this 600-person friend group, basically, that is all chasing financial freedom and helping everybody else do the same. It's awesome. Yeah. It's turned into something way more than we ever thought it could be.
More family than friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, here's a perfect example. We had, unfortunately, one of the members of our group had probably the most tragic thing that I can think of happen to her. Her husband committed suicide, and she is left with 3 little boys. And I mean, I don't want to get too much into this story because it's really, really heartbreaking. But the bright side of it is it had nothing to do with real estate, but everybody around her that was in part of this White Feather network mobilized in whatever way they could think of to help. I mean, we need to figure out how the insurance works, right? We need to make sure the insurance pays out because there's clauses where they won't pay out, right? So we got an insurance attorney to talk to. We need to figure out how create an estate plan because now you're the last remaining person. All these things that you don't want to think about when you're trying to grieve. We had people just offering their time free of charge, offering to take over portions of the business so that she could focus on her family, and so on and so on. My point is, it's so funny when people ask me, they're like, what's your client like? What's your your ideal client like? I'm like, bro, we don't have clients. Like we do business with people, but like, you're not going to come into my office and, me like break out my calculator and say,
his office is a shed.
Yeah, it's a tough shed out there. Anyway, the point though is it has become absolutely a 600-person family where, we're united by the common mission that is a beautiful one. And that's, we think that people who have fought to preserve our nation's freedom deserve a chance to have that freedom in their life. Mm-hmm. And financial freedom is a bedrock of that. Mm-hmm. And so that's the mission. And because of that mission is so, in my mind, so powerful and so resonates with my soul and ours, that's what our life is built around now. And the mission is just to reach, there's 16.5 million veterans in this country. And on average, the vast majority of them are not living lives of freedom. And so that's our
very
mission.
Cool. Well, as I'm sitting here listening and thinking through that, while you were active in military and active investors and starting a company and right, all the things that life brings as you're going, mm-hmm. What do you think was the hardest thing that you guys went through growing this business early on?
Well,
I would say navigating the challenges of role shifting, right? Like mm-hmm. going from doing it together to then him doing all of it on his own and me focusing on family and then still wanting to feel involved, but like mm-hmm. having no place anymore and trying to like dip my little fingers back in there. And then there's nothing for me to do. That was, I think, my hardest part mm-hmm. and just the balance between that.
Yeah. I mean, well, at first, like I'll just say 4 words: working with your spouse, right? So just for anybody listening to this, just think to yourself, okay, I have my spouse. Let's build $4 million businesses together while still having a full-time job. How do we think we're going to navigate that?
Yeah.
Right?
So he would work on base, come home. By the way, I was super pregnant at this point. Come home and be like, all right, babe, I'm going to go to the office. So he's going all day. He would come home, he'd go upstairs and work until nighttime because that's the only time he could, right? And I got used to just not seeing him, but I was like, when these babies come, you better be present. And it just, like, the reality is we sacrificed a lot in the beginning to make it work. And
yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. I mean, we had epic fights too. I mean, like I tell people this, we're both the youngest, we're both Sagittarius, we're both alpha types, and we love and fight passionately. Like, that's just the best way I can describe it. And so we, when we have, here's the best part.
It's amazing we've lasted 15 years.
The best part is when you can, there's a problem or an opportunity, and there's multiple ways to solve it. And both of our ways are vastly different, but both could work. That's when it's it's not when we disagree, but there's one right answer. That's not a problem. We figure that out. It's when there's 2 right answers and we each have chosen one of them.
And mine too.
And we're like, we stand on the ground. No. And it's like, what is it? This
is the hill I die on.
Yeah, this is the hill. And it's like, we're in violent violent agreement.
Yeah.
It's like, we should do it this way. No, we should do it this way. And both will work. Right. That's a challenge.
So, you asked.
Hey,
it's messy.
I own and run 6 businesses and I own and run 6 businesses and I know what it means when you're dealing with that. How do you keep a family going, right? That is always, for me, the business portion to me is always the easy part. Because it's like you kind of said earlier, buddy, you just put on your boot, so to speak, and go do your job, right? We know that portion.
Execute.
How did we keep a family going and keep my relationship with my wife first and foremost? That's always the battle of that. To me, it was. So I'm interested. Tell me a little more about the Accelerator class. What does it teach?
Yeah. So basically, we at the very beginning, we went through the education courses. Like, we paid $40,000 on our credit cards for the Rich Dad education course, which was a great course, but wildly overpriced. And, then we educated ourselves in a ton of different ways, right? And one of the things that we noticed was missing from every single course that we were a part of was there was no action component. It was all education. It was like, go out there and make offers and do this, and that's great. And then whenever you would go and you'd be like, well, I'm trying to, do you have an offer letter I can use? And they're like, well, consult with your state attorney. And I'm like, okay, I could have done that right?
And we found that's what held most people up.
Yeah.
Is those little tiny details, because it held us up. We're like, well,
proof
how
of
can we
funds.
make offers if
where can I get a proof of funds? Like, this guy won't. So all these little things that, really limited most of the people that we were in those courses with. Most of them never ended up doing successful business. And so we saw these really high priced education courses that were cranking out mostly people who just learned and then didn't do anything. And so we're like, why don't we flip that on its head and create an action course that has undergirded with an educational backbone? And that's what the Accelerator is. So it's 6 months. And I tell people, everybody has to apply. Everybody has to go through a vetting process, because what we ultimately want is we want your success story. That's what ultimately I want, because here's a perfect example. So the Accelerator, at least right now, as of this recording, is $1,250 a month for 6 months. So $7,500 total, breaking up into 6 months. So relatively inexpensive in the scheme of things. And if you look at it, you run a business. How much of that net do I actually make out of each trip? Right, a fraction. So the money for the tuition, we'll call it what you want, is not going to change my life in any way. But if you go turn into a Justin Lockby, you go turn into a Milena, you go turn into a Dave Ortiz, or any of those other people who had massive success and turned back in and said, hey, buddy, let's do this deal together. And then we made 30, 40, 50 times as much off of your success as we ever would off of your tuition. So what we tell people is we vet people very hard, because we want the most success stories, and the outsized results for an average student going through is eye-popping. It's unbelievable. And so the Accelerator is 6 months long, and it teaches everything from how to do your own, financial snapshot, basic vision board, figure out your why, create your financial freedom blueprint, onto everything, acquisition strategies. We teach creative financing strategies, teach how to wholesale, how to do market analysis, both macro and micro, cash flow analysis.
You make them make offers.
We heavily recommend that they make offers. And because we make it abundantly clear,
action.
that if you don't make offers, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter, right? And you protect yourself with contingencies, right? Always just protect yourself with contingencies. And what's the risk in making an offer? The real risk is not making an offer, because you're never going to change your life if you don't do deals. And, and I tell people, and this is true, if it is a good enough deal, the money will find you. I promise. Money is the last, everybody says, I can't get into real estate investing. Why? Because I don't have any money. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if you only knew that there's oceans of money out there waiting for your deals. There's not enough deals is the real problem. There's not enough real deals. There's money everywhere. And so once they learn that, they turn into monsters, and it's amazing. It's beautiful to see. So
I think Justin's story is my favorite. He went and made offer after offer after offer after 156?
Yeah, his 156th offer, I believe it was.
He scores a oceanfront row of 13 homes.
12 or 11. Ocean's 11.
Wasn't it originally 13?
Oh, it wasn't originally 13. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right.
And then ended up negotiating a group deal of multi-million-dollar.
Yeah, it was a $5 million. He got it at a $2.3 million discount. These were
he had not even close to that in the bank, right? This was a brand new development where the guy that developed went under, and the hard money lender took it back. So he's in it for 50, 60% LTV, whatever, right? And so these are brand new homes with ocean view in Daytona Beach shores. And he negotiated down over months, and he negotiated $2.3 million off of the value and got it locked up. He had 10 grand in the bank at the time. And he calls Buddy. He's like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah, you can find all this.
I just got this accepted. Oh my gosh.
You can find this story on our YouTube and on Instagram and things like that. We call it the Ocean's 11 deal, because we ended up doing 11 of these townhomes. He ended up scoring those, and then we ended up bringing a bunch of investors in and wholesaling it to the white feather investors, wholesaling it to them, giving them, we got it.
$100K.
Yeah, each one was a $165,000 discount. And so we ended up giving them to the investors for a $50,000, $60,000 wholesale fee. So they each got a $100,000 discount. And Justin ended up, creating almost $600,000 in 2 months that we split 50-50. So he came into the course, paid his $1,250 a month, then went out and made offers, and tenaciously made offers, and then plugged into the network. We brought the capital, we brought the investors, we brought the know-how and the execution, and we just chopped it up 50-50. And here's the and I'm not saying I recommend people do this, but here's a glimpse into the power of trust inside the White Feather Network. Justin and I had an agreement to split the proceeds 50-50. It was a verbal agreement. He had the escrow send the money to my bank account, and he knew without a shadow of a doubt that every single penny that I promised him he would get, and he did.
Wow.
So
one of the things that I found interesting about you guys is as I've trying to, we tried to dig in and learn more about you guys behind the thing, and it's key to me. Faith for me is one of the biggest things in my family's life. Kimberly, I've learned that you've been involved a lot with military wives and ministry at Daybreak Church. If is that correct? Daybreak Church. Okay. So can you share, why you got involved and what the ministry itself does?
So when we first moved here, this was 10, 12 years ago. Gosh, I can't remember.
Something like that,
yeah. This was right when Buddy was training up for deployment. And we moved to a state I hadn't really been yet because 29 Palms doesn't count.
29 Palms is not California.
I'm sorry, that is
it's the Mojave Desert.
Yeah.
it's Hell's Annex.
They filmed horror stories there.
They did. The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah,
Remember that old horror movie? They filmed it out there.
So we moved to California, get the full experience, and then he basically leaves right away. And that was, if you remember, right after I quit my job. So now I have nothing to do and I know no one. And I had just found this church right before he left. We had just plugged in. So I basically went there and I was like, what can I do? How can I help? Because it's the best way to learn, right? It's to volunteer. And then it turns out that there's a lot of military wives there that husbands had just left or were gearing up for a deployment with a different battalion. And so I was like, what if we start a military wives group? And I met with some of the leaders at the church and they're like, if you want to run it. And I was like, wait, I didn't mean that. I just mean can I just join one? So then of course that's how it works, right? You ask and they empower you. And I met with some other girlfriends of mine and we decided to start this group. And so it was meant specifically to help pour into military spouses. And I don't think they have it anymore. It kind of died during COVID as all things did out here, but it was years and years and years of support and love and pouring into the spouses who felt alone and isolated and struggling because it's hard. And where we are in this base here, they deployed a lot during that time. So
yeah, I remember whenever there was that one time she saw a news story. So I was at a place called Leatherneck, Camp Leatherneck in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and there was a adjoining British base called Bastion, and that's where Prince Henry or one of the princes was. And I don't know, so one of the princes of the UK joined the army and was kind of a high level. He was a like a
pilot, right?
No, he was basically what we call a FAC, a forward air controller. So he would call in the aircraft to do bombing runs and stuff. Anyway, so the Taliban knew that he was on Bastion, and so they actually broke through the wire and started blasting the aircraft and everything. And so Bastion was roiling up in smoke, and it's international news, right? You can go back and look at it, but it's international news. And so she sees this news story of these, from a helicopter, filming basically my base. She didn't know that Bastion was right next to our base. So she thought, and it looked like our base was completely under attack. And I had left for a big mission at the time. And so I was completely off the net, right? And so she couldn't reach me. She saw my base up in flames. And so imagine that. And by the way, a lot of the women in the wives group, their husbands were over there because a lot of the same women in the battalion get together to, and I mean, really all that you have is prayer and faith that your husband will make it through and come home, or your wife. And some of them were, we had a lot of females over there too. So, I mean, it was kind of the glue that held your emotions and your life together.
One of the things, and so many things that we're talking about and you guys are going through, as you're giving me these answers and I'm kind of listening and pulling that through, it amazes me how consistently the response is you saw a need and you jumped in to how do we be a part of providing solutions, whether it's for financial freedom for your brothers in arms, for those around you, whether it's for women that are going through something like you, even in a time when you needed that, here you are saying, hey, let's start that for each other. I think those are the things that as I listen to your story, so much of that is what's interesting is that you're not You've never looked for just while the rich dad, poor dad may have started out of how do we fix our situation? How do we get out of, the Tennessee lifestyle that I had there was no way out. It's turned into this is how we help other people, right? So it's really cool to hear about this stuff of your story. So so you guys are involved in a new venture, Veterans for Financial Freedom. Can you tell our audience, can you tell us how do you get involved, and is it for military only?
Yeah, so this is our, I don't know what you want to call it. So as we built White Feather, it morphed over time. It was initially just about us, and then it became about helping the Marines that I had worked with, and then it kind of gradually spread over to other people that were been through similar situations to me, like gone through the Naval Academy or whatever. Well, the vast majority of those people are officers, right? And for anybody that doesn't realize, in the military, you have most of the people in the military are enlisted, and then you have officers who tend, by and large, to get paid more and to be more educated, like from the perspective of college and stuff. You have to be a college graduate in order to become an officer and so on. And so, by and large, those are the people that can take more action and make more investments. And so we started there just because that's where we found that we could get the most traction. But it always weighed on my heart that the vast majority of the Marines I served with and the people that are also fighting oftentimes even harder to preserve the American dream and suffering even more weren't a part of this. And that weighed on me heavily for years. But again, we had to start somewhere. And so we decided last year, we're like, okay, we built in private long enough, and we have hundreds and hundreds of success stories that prove that this works. I mean, it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. This works. And so it's like, if I were to ask you, hey, is real estate a good path to build financial freedom? It's like, bro, you've been doing this how long? 30 years? There is no doubt in your mind, right? And so for us, there's absolutely no doubt in our mind that a veteran can build financial freedom using real estate. And so we were like, okay, how do we do this? There's 16.5 million veterans out there. And how do we reach them? Well, in order to reach people, you have to lower the barrier of entry to basically zero, which means it has to be free. Okay. And so we're like, all right, so we're going to launch this massive scale, right? This community. We want to reach thousands and then 10,000s and then 100,000 and then eventually millions of people. And we want to do the community for free. It's going to take a huge effort, and we are not going to make money off of the community itself. Put that into a business model, will you? Right? So how do we do this, right? And so obviously in any business, you have to be able to pay for it. And so, we're like, okay, so we've got things we do that make money, and they're making plenty of money. Let's launch this free community that's about bringing people together. It's about educating them. It's about showing them what's possible, and it's about linking them up with other people that can help, like VA loan officers and, people that can teach them how to get their VA disability, right? So many people that are deserving of VA disability rating, which 100% rating, by the way, gives you around $4,000 a month of tax-free, risk-free income for the rest of your life. You tell me if that can't solve a poverty issue, right? And a lot of the people that are really struggling, they deserve 100% because they got jacked up. And they just don't, it's just not something that's focused on. And so we don't want to complain. As I can tell you as a Marine, you never want to complain. So yeah, my ankles hurt. Yeah, my hips hurt. Like, yeah, my back hurts. Yeah, I've got PTSD and I've got, issues with my emotions and with anxiety. And yeah, sure. I mean, I've, pulled dead mother and her baby out of the mud in the Philippines when I was 23 years old. Yeah, sure. But we don't want to complain. And so you don't complain, and thereby you don't normally get anything. I got out without any VA rating. So teaching people what's available for them and how to use the things that are available to them to improve their life and to create some financial stability and so on. That's the focus of VFF. That's why we called it Veterans for Financial Freedom. The answer to your question, though, is no, it's not just for service members. Okay. We thought about this long and hard, and we said, okay, what's our real mission? We love this country so much, and the reason we love this country is because of how free it is. That's it. We love how free it is, right? And this country was founded on go F yourself, Britain. We're going to live in freedom, right? And we're going to fight for that freedom, right? It's founded that way, and that pioneer spirit is still very much alive, regardless of who we are not political at all. So regardless of what you think politically, like I would find me one person that thinks America isn't free, and I'll find you 100 that knows that it is, right? And so, right, because that's where we live. So anyway, the reason that we believe that this country remains free is because if somebody breaks into my house and I call 911, there's going to be a police officer that shows up and gives me my freedom back, right? From this tyranny, from this threat. If my house catches fire, I'm going to call 911 and there's a firefighter that's going to save me and my family and give us the freedom of life from this fire. If I have a heart attack right now and I call 911, there's an emergency responder that's going to come save my life and take me to the hospital and give me the freedom of life, right? So who are we to say that military are the only people who deserve a shot at the American dream? Because we're not the only ones who defend it. And so Veterans for Financial Freedom, I love, man, I'm just getting all jacked up just talking about this. Veterans for Financial Freedom is for anybody that has served in a capacity to keep this beautiful dream alive. Military, veterans, firefighters, police officers, emergency responders.
Okay, so Kimberly, let me ask you this, kind of as a closing process of it. You're responsible for the branding and the brand management of the company. So how do people get involved with what you're doing? How do they reach out? How do they get plugged into you?
I would say the easiest thing is go to the website, veteransforfinancialfreedom.org. There's a whole link on how to get plugged in for free to join. It immediately sends you to the community site. And then you'll see a whole calendar of events. You'll see where we are in person. So our event is the 24th here in San Diego. So Tony's going to be there. Bruce is going to be there. Obviously, we'll be there. And that's step one. So we meet face to face. We help people get that connection and that community together, which I think, especially once you're out, you lack the most, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to see master classes that we do for free. So we do those once a month, and we'll bring in an expert on something, like the one that we just had was on, what was it? Digital real estate. Yeah. VA house hacking, disability benefits, like investment opportunities, stuff like that, right? How to house hack and like live for free, right? And how to Turo your car and have it pay for itself while you drive it the rest of the time. How to turn there's a ton of really, really cool stuff. But yeah, so that's the classes that we put on. So they can just go in and figure out what it is they want and then plug in. And then there's a community for them to help support them and then offer them suggestions of where to go from there. So that's
the whole goal is to take somebody, regardless of where they are. Right? I don't care if we've had somebody with $150,000 of credit card debt. He started out at $150,000 of credit card debt, and now he's completely debt free from a credit card perspective. He has a good, healthy debt, but like he's paid off all his credit cards. He's purchased like 3 or 4 rental properties. And what's most powerful is that Rent sent me an email and he said, the biggest change has not been the credit card debt or any of that. All that stuff is very awesome and it's functional. And I've worked really hard to do that. But my wife and I are so much happier now. We fight less. We're more excited about our future than we were because we don't have this hanging over our heads. Instead, it's a hopeful, exciting, compelling future. So on one hand, it's like, okay, money is, financial freedom and creating money and paying off debt and all this stuff. It's all good and exciting, but what's the point, right? When you get to the point, and the point is beautiful relationships and memories and excitement. And, we have no idea how many days we have left in this life. Right. And so if you're spending every single day just surviving, just existing, that's not what you were put here for.
That's it.
Right? But you only get to wake up to your purpose when you're not crowded by crap that's like taking up all of your bandwidth, So anyway, I digressed a little bit, but people can start anywhere, whether they're, like I said, $150,000 of credit card debt, or we have a guy who was, we had a guy join our group who, was in the C-suite for several major multi-billion-dollar corporations. The guy's worth $100 million, and he loves the community, loves being able to work together with people and give back and take advantage of investment opportunities that are not in stocks and not in startups and things like that. So, yeah, whether you're worth $100 million or you're $150,000 in credit card debt or anything in between, there's a place. There's a place for you.
Guys, listen, I am so grateful for the time you've given us today. I wanted people to get to know Buddy and Kimberly. I wanted them to hear who you are and what your story is. To all those listening, I appreciate your time with us. We look forward to next week, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
See ya.
Bye.
For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.